want to share with you is really a way of thinking about not just about systems change itself, but also how each of us can participate in that in the most effective way and be part of that. Because I expect that everybody in this conversation is involved in some way in trying to shift what seems wrong to a different kind of way of being. But oftentimes we get caught up either in conversations with others where we feel like, oh, what that person's doing is too far out there and that you have to be focused on the short term, and then other people have the opposite feelings. And it's hard to sometimes feel into, well, where does my work fit into the grand scheme of what we're trying to achieve? And that's what I'm going to try to explore with us all today. And it's going to be quite interactive. We're going to have a few different sessions, actually some online polls and some interactive time spending together at different times through this. I'm going to start off with actually a presentation just to kind of get the framing sort of clear to begin with. So what I'm going to do is actually move to share screening to take you through the presentation and then come back out of it. So let me just do that. And hopefully everyone is seeing on their screen right now, mapping legal system change, the 3 horizons model. And this 3 horizons model, some of you may have heard of, and for others it might be brand new. It was actually something designed by McKinsey some decades ago as a way of thinking about business in general, and they found it effective. But the model itself has been reinterpreted in the progressive world to think about, to use the same ideas, to think about actual systems change. And the model itself is quite sort of simple, the general concept. It basically goes like this, like one horizon is what's happening right in front of you, the things that need to be worked on right away. The next horizon is further out there, like beginning to look beyond where we're at right now. It's what might be possible. And then there's this final horizon, almost like the sort of way we're trying to achieve in the long term, that is almost like some sort of Shangri-La value or something, but it's further out there and it may be beyond what we're seeing right now. So the way that this model has been sort of interpreted, thinking about system change, goes something like this. And this is actually designed by really a pioneering and visionary thinker, Daniel Christian Weil, who wrote this great book, Designing Regenerative Culture. And this slide comes from his book. And if you think about the horizontal axis being time, and this vertical axis on this slide being like the prevalence of the thinking and activity and based on horizons. So basically, if we think of our world right now, maybe being like a world in crisis, and at some point, as this crisis may move towards transition towards a different kind of world, and obviously the hope or the intention is that it finally moves to a more viable world in the future. And the notion is that at different times, different phases in time, different horizons are the ones that are more predominant in how people think. So right now, with the world in crisis, most activity is still in this horizon 1, dealing with this critical stuff that's going on. As the world begins to transition, this kind of restructured thinking of horizon 2, and we'll describe it a little bit more in a moment, gets to be more prevalent. And then finally, as things really shift into a new paradigm, that third horizon thinking, which was really very kind of low on the priority list for a lot of time, can become prevalent. So just to look at what these mean, like horizon 1, we can think of in terms of sort of sustaining and fixing things. And sometimes people talk about like, keep the lights on, but it also can be trying to improve things, improve the status quo. Horizon 2, we can think of in terms of what sometimes called disruptive innovation, identifying opportunities to change the scope of what's possible. So it can sometimes feel a lot more exciting and disruptive than Horizon 1, but it still exists within the overall paradigm of the current situation. Whereas Horizon 3 is different from those two in that it's focusing on places and opportunities for a true transformative innovation. things that actually can facilitate this transition towards a totally new paradigm. Now, a very useful way of thinking about how sort of interpreting this three horizons model comes from actually a different model, but which maps onto it very well, by Donella Meadows. Some of you may have heard of her. She was one of the really great pioneering systems thinkers of the last few decades. And she wrote this book, Thinking in Systems. And she also wrote a very popular paper that's become like a classic in this area called Leverage Points, Places to Intervene in a System. And on the left, you'll see she's got 9 different leverage points here. I won't take you through each one, but simple way of looking at it is we can understand these leverage points by horizons. So her point is that the least effective way to actually change a system, even though they're important in the short term, is what we can sort of map as horizon 1. This is things like changing the way in which we measure things, or she's changing material flows or information flows. They're good, important things to do, but they still stay within that same system. Horizon 2 maps onto what she sees as higher leverage points, like changing the rules of the system, like incentives, or the distribution of power over the rules. And then Horizon 3, she views as the most leveraged way to intervene in a system, which is actually change the goals of the system itself, change the mindset or the paradigm from which everything else arises. So that's just another way of modeling it. Now, some of you may have had a chance to take a look at this keynote presentation I gave at the beginning of this whole 5-day conference a couple of days ago on this vision of an ecological civilization. And I'll just take you through a quick summary of what this vision was about, because it represents my sense, and not just mine, but others, of what a different paradigm would look like right now. So this is an example of thinking in that third horizon. And this notion is that this century, we actually need to undergo a change as significant as some of these other great changes in human history, from hunter-gatherer to agriculture, or agriculture to scientific revolution. And an ecological civilization represents an actual transformation in the basis of the global civilization, from one that's wealth-based to life-based. So actually looking at a complete cultural and economic system change, promoting sustainable flourishing for humans and Earth. And while this presentation is not specifically about ecological civilization, I just want to flesh out what we mean to give you an example of a third horizon sort of model here. It's like it changes the story of the way in which we make sense of the world, saying we're all interconnected in the web of life. And it's based on different principles for a civilization, things like things that we get from the living world, like symbiosis and balance, regeneration. And those principles translate into different ways of looking at society, like each party contributes and receives reciprocally, or this notion that the health of the whole requires the flourishing of each part, or that every part in a harmonious relationship and it should be in a harmonious relationship with the entire system. So in this case, it would look at different principles to live our civilization by than we're used to right now. And this in turn would lead to very different elements of our society. A society dominated by things like agroecology and transformed eco-cities, and changing the measurement of the society by getting rid of GDP, a circular economy, things like that. And it represents basically a transformation in values, emphasizing the quality of life, our shared humanity, and symbiosis with the living Earth. So this is just to give you this sense of what a third horizon way of thinking is like. It like really tries to shift the entire paradigm. But now, just to kind of test, if you will, how we're doing in terms of communicating these ideas, we're going to also kind of have a little bit of fun here too and get interactive. I'm going to present, I think, something like 7 different ideas or sort of things that either are happening right now or ideas of what could happen. And I'm going to ask you all to join in a Zoom poll. And for each one, I'm going to describe it a little bit and then ask you to just say, based on how I've described it, do you see this particular thing I'm describing as being in the first horizon primarily, or second horizon, or third horizon? It's not like a right or wrong thing, because actually, even I'm not sure with some of these, having thought about it, should this really be horizon 1 or 2, or it should be horizon 2 or 3? So it's more just to give a sense of, are we on a similar track? And I can just comment for a moment or two for each one. So, hopefully that's clear. And I'll begin with this first one, which actually was a picture I took some time a while back, a year or two ago, before COVID. I was actually walking into an airport in Newark in the United States, and it had this great sign that I just had to take a picture of. It says, Terminal 4 is green, you know, sustainability, fun facts, all these ways in which by being part of Terminal 4, which is LEED certified, it's environmentally designed, and so it feels good. So my first question is, does this Terminal 4 being green, does this seem to you like something that exists in Horizon 1, 2, or 3? And why don't we just really quickly just click on which one you see. Go to number 1. Is this right, Samir? Like, and do I need to get out of my screen share right now, or can people see the poll?
I believe people can see the poll on their screen right now.
Okay, great.
Yes.
So everyone just put, if a question 1, do you see this as Horizon 1, 2, or 3? And no need to sort of think hard about it. Just take a couple of seconds, enter it, and then hopefully we can actually show the answer on a little bar chart. I don't know if that will work, Samir.
I see Alexa is mentioning that we need the 3 questions before we can submit. So,
is that right?
So
okay.
Do you need to, okay.
Well, let me keep moving on, and you just have to try to keep remember in your mind. I'll remind you which is 1, which is 2, which is 3. It might be a little confusing. So question 1 is Terminal 4. Where is it at? The next one is, let's think about the Tesla, this great electric car that's completely sort of shifted what's possible in terms of in terms of driving and electricity. As you probably all know, like, you know, Elon Musk, the great billionaire hero from Silicon Valley, swooping in to save our world from fossil fuels and stuff. So do you see the whole sort of Tesla thing being Horizon 1, Horizon 2, or Horizon 3? And then I'll move to the third question, and then we'll see if our polling works. So the third one is something different, is voluntary certification for the type of incorporation, meaning that some of you may have heard of benefit corporations or B Corps. They offer a legal system where a company can choose to become a B Corp or a benefit corp, where their actual bylaws of the company tell them that rather than just focusing on shareholder value, they should be also looking at things like their workers' needs, customers, suppliers, community, and environment. And over 3,000 companies worldwide have actually signed on to shift their charters. So this is a question, is this a Horizon 1, Horizon 2, or Horizon 3? And this voluntary certification for the type of company you are. So let's try to see if our poll works now. For question 1, which was the LEED certified terminal at Newark Airport, was that Horizon 1, 2, or 3?
I think we have to answer all 7 questions. Seems.
Oh, really?
Yeah, sure.
Oh, okay. Well, the we can do that. The only thing is it's going to be a little bit challenging for people to remember. I guess, not quite sure how we'll do this. I'll just try to, I'll go through them all. We'll go to the poll and I'll try to remind everybody what they are.
Jeremy, we'll add
Oh,
the
great, thank you.
examples in the
You're
chat.
putting that in the chat. Excellent, thank you. Super. Okay, so the next poll question is actually similar concept of how corporations are chartered, but this one would be something where a triple bottom line is required for corporate charters. So basically, a triple bottom line means something like the B Corporation, that the company has to be rechartered. So it's not just focused on profits, but also people, like workers, employees, customers, et cetera, and the planet. And in this scenario, transnational corporations would have to be fundamentally reorganized. They would only be able to renew their charters at the discretion of community representatives picked from around the world where they're actually located to determine if they're really meeting those triple bottom lines. So that's another potential. And so the question is, what horizon would that be on if it were to exist? So let's move on to the next one now. Okay, so there's a case that it's a famous case right now about Chevron versus the state of Ecuador and a law firm and a lawyer called Steve Dunziger. So Steve Dunziger is this great environmental lawyer who led this huge team that won a lawsuit against Chevron back in 2011, causing them to pay $18 billion in compensation for this massive pollution in Ecuador. It's basically like the Chernobyl of Ecuador, huge oil pollution all over the forest there. Chevron have never paid a penny of that. And instead they retaliated against Steve Dunziger in the US courts, and using incredible amounts of corruption, they've managed to actually fiddle the law essentially. So the Dunziger himself is now essentially a corporate political prisoner under house arrest in New York because of the fact that he didn't want to give up confidential information from some of his people who worked with him. So this, here's another question, is this whole situation between Chevron and Steve Dunziger, is this really a horizon 1, 2, or 3 situations going on? Let's look next at the idea, and Jojo Meto, who heads up this incredible organization, Stop Ecocide, is actually going to be speaking here, I think, on Tuesday. And this idea of having ecocide defined as a crime at the International Criminal Court. The founder of this, Stop Ecocide, Polly Higgins, talked about how the rules of our world are laws and they can be changed. So this idea is that right now the ICC recognizes just 4 crimes. We'd add a 5th, ecocide, so that a corporate executive who is involved in causing massive ecocide actually risks getting arrested and liable to criminal prosecution at The Hague. So would that be horizon 1, 2, or 3? And then we've got one more. So that's number 6, Stop Ecocide. And then the final one is a declaration of the rights of nature at the United Nations. So we know the Human Rights Declaration in 1947, I think it was, really powerful shift in the way of thinking about what is a universal human right for a human being. So this idea would be to take something that actually has been done in Ecuador and Bolivia, where constitutional rights have been granted to Pachamama or Mother Nature. And there's even been a group with the Universal Declaration of the Rights of Mother Earth, sitting its 4th in Bolivia in 2010, about Mother Earth is like this self-regulating community of interrelated beings and deserves fundamental rights. So now if that were declared at the UN, would that be a horizon 1, 2, or 3 event in your minds? So now we've done those, let's do the polls and just kind of see. It looks like it's working now. So it'll be interesting to see how people think about it. And remember, there's no right or wrong answer to these. I mean, well, there is somewhat, I would argue, might be wrong perhaps, but there's a lot of room for thinking about where these things exist. And that's part of the interest in this Q&A part.
And just as a reminder, you can see in the chat, numbered 1 through 7, the examples that Jeremy has shared. So if you need a quick reminder, just take a look at that and submit your poll.
So let's give a couple more moments if anybody is still thinking. And yeah, it seems like we've had our seems like everyone who's going to answer has answered. So let's take a look and see. It's interesting to actually see. I'm curious myself. Like, will this align with my own sense of things? So let's look at this. Is everyone able to see the poll on the screen? Is that right? The answers? Yeah, it looks like it. Okay, great. So let's see. So the Newark Terminal 4. So most people saw that as being Horizon 1, and I would agree with that. You know, that's kind of, it's a good thing to do, but doesn't change things in any sort of rule-breaking kind of way. The Tesla, yeah, most people voted for Horizon 2, and I would agree with that completely. I think that's the thing. Tesla is exciting. It's really a disruptive technology, but it still exists within the current paradigm of this sort of for-profit, corporate-owned company and this kind of billionaire trying to save the world or whatever. This is an interesting one, that B Corp's voluntary certification. And it's interesting that there was almost a equal split, close to equal, between Horizon 1 and 2, because I'm actually there myself too. It's like, I see, in some ways it's like Horizon 1, because it sort of just allows a company to sort of feel good, if you will. It doesn't really change things in a drastic way. On the other hand, there is a Horizon 2 quality about it, because it gives this sense of how we could do things in different ways. So it opens up a vision for what's possible. But only one person voted for Horizon 3, and I would agree with you that it's not really Horizon 3 in the sense that it's such an incremental shift, and it doesn't affect, and like, you know, no major transnational corporation would ever choose this. So the system remains the same. So now number 4, if there were triple bottom line required for corporations, I find this fascinating because, again, I was actually, in my own thinking, it's almost Horizon 2 leading to Horizon 3. And so we see here that, again, most people are sharing that thinking. It's Horizon 2 in the sense that it really transforms the roles. And in a sense, it's like Horizon 3, because imagine if you did have these transnational corporations where their actual goals were no longer to just make money, but also to serve the environment and to actually serve the people that are related to them. That would be truly transformative. In fact, personally, I've put that down as part of my vision of what an ecological civilization would look like. So I think it's very interesting that people are right on the border of Horizon 2 and 3, because that's just how I'm thinking about it. So 5, Chevron versus Ecuador. Well, here the majority of people are voting for Horizon 1, and I would agree. And part of my point here is that this is to get the sense that whatever horizon you're in is not like it doesn't really affect, are you doing something good or not? And to me, Stephen Dunsiger is one of the great heroes of our time. He's put his whole life out there on the line to really serve Mother Earth, basically, and try to like get this fossil fuel company to pay up for its destruction. And he's paying for it with his freedom and with almost every part of his life. But I still see that as being mostly really Horizon 1, because it's basically just trying to get a company to pay up on what the rules actually tell them they need to do already. So what about ecocide being a crime at the UN? Well, I'm agreed with the majority of people here too, that I do see it mostly as Horizon 2, because it's truly a shift, a disruptor. but it still does it within the overall rules of the system. It's just trying to change a rule within that overall system. But I also agree with those who chose Horizon 3 that is a sense in which it does lead to more Horizon 3 thinking. And then finally, I see, it seems like everyone chose Horizon 3 for the Declaration of the Rights of Mother Earth, and I'm in complete agreement with you. So I'm thrilled about this because I really get the sense that, yeah, we're on track. We're all getting this model, which is kind of exciting to see. And now, at this point, I think, yeah, I just want to do one more slide, and then we're going to break for just a breakout group. I want to just take a look at this notion of how, when we look at these horizons, there's an interesting thing that arises, and this is why this is one reason why this horizon thinking is helpful, because oftentimes when we're stuck in our horizon, we can be judgmental about people in other horizons. So in this case, we can see that if you're in Horizon 1 and what you're doing is trying to fix things right now in the short term, it's very easy to see people who are focused on Horizon 2 as what they're trying to do is too risky or far out there. And people working on Horizon 3 is basically being irrelevant because it's not dealing with stuff in the real time. If your work is mostly in Horizon 2, you might see Horizon 1 focusing as being more like obstructive, and they're getting in the way of what really needs to change. And Horizon 3 might be inspiring, but still a little bit far out there. And if you're in Horizon 3, and that's the work you're doing, well, you think Horizon 1, sometimes you might sort of judge them as just being kind of lunatic, if you will, because they're just part of this society that is just self-destructing. And Horizon 2 you might see as promising, but not really getting to, you know, what you really need to be. So the point about this is that it helps to notice if we have our own judgments about other horizons, and to recognize above all, this is one of the key takeaways from this model, that every horizon is hugely important. It's not like there's one horizon that we all need to be on, but we need to recognize that all three, we need to be working in all three at the same time. So now at this point, having set that up, I'll turn to Samir to facilitate our first breakout session, where I'm going to ask you just to consider and then share with the other people in your group, what horizon are you primarily working in your own work? And just describe your work with the other people in your group and why you see it being in that horizon.
So yeah, as Jeremy said, you know, when you get into the breakout rooms, and Leslie, if you could please make rooms of 4 people, you have about 15 minutes to explore this question. So of course, begin by sharing a little bit about the work that you are doing, and there might be many different things, and then explore this question. So what horizon are you primarily working in? So Leslie, if you could please open up the rooms for 4 people for about 15 minutes, that would be wonderful. All right, welcome back, everyone. I think some people are still joining us from their breakout rooms. I would love to just invite everyone to just put in the chats what their response was to the question. What horizon are you primarily working in? So I don't think we have a poll set up for this, unfortunately, but just enter into the chat the number, whether you thought you were working on 1, 2, or 3.
The poll is on the screen.
Oh, there's a poll. Oh, there's a poll as well. I'm seeing some interesting responses here. All 3, more than 1, both 1 and 3. Interesting. Lipsa is sharing that she's in a place where she has to articulate Horizon 3 into Horizon 1 action. Interesting. Would you like to share something about that, Lipsa?
Yeah, so there's this new company that I've joined. It's a social enterprise, and it's been started by these 2 founders who are visionary, and they've done a lot of work in the livelihood space. in getting incomes for the informal labor sector. But because of the scale that they are going through, they're struggling with translating that vision down to operations, and the entire organization has become so transactional. So they wanted someone who can understand both the sides and mediate it and then translate that vision back into the way we do operations. That it's not about finishing 3 things, but at the end of it, it's about getting a real income to a person who did not have any other choice. So kind of that's just my role of doing that negotiation back and forth.
Fascinating. And one of the things that came up in the conversation, as Jeremy already told us, is that you're never really in one, you're never on just one horizon. There's always a connection between those two. And Jeremy, I'd love to pass the mic back to you, because I think you would have something to share about these different on-ramps and such. You're mute, Jeremy. We can't hear you at the moment.
Okay, great. I think I'm unmuted now. Yeah, so in fact, where I'm about to go now in the sort of second part of this presentation thing really follows from what Lipsa was just describing. So it's interesting, because that's the thing. This model is, it's really valuable to get the framework, but then where that framework leads is what I find most interesting about it. So I'll go back to screen sharing right now. And just take you through this next couple of points about this model. So here's the thing. One way to look at this model is what is the downside of if there's too much focus on horizon 1, basically. So what this graph kind of shows is that there's this notion of these 3 horizons over time. But if there's too much prevalence on just horizon 1 and not enough focus on horizon 2 and 3, that's what can lead to collapse. So in this sense, so everyone's focused on horizon 1, then, oh, lo and behold, the whole social fabric collapses. And then one hopes that maybe horizon 2 then takes over and horizon 3, but that's would be more like kind of speculative. And then there's another scenario that if not enough people are thinking about horizon 3, so if people are either going between horizon 1 or horizon 2, trying to be disruptive, but still accepting the overall paradigm, then that's a little bit like sort of kicking the can down the road. And an example of that might be, okay, we look at climate breakdown, and then we say, okay, we need to do these transitions from fossil fuel to an electronic economy or whatever. But if we're not looking at the overall context of the fact that we're destroying our living Earth, but we just find technologies that allow us to destroy the Earth more efficiently for longer without the climate going out of whack, then that would be more like horizon 1 and 2, but horizon 3 thinking never actually gets to be dominant. And then at some point that will lead to its own form of collapse. So the thing about the horizon, this kind of 3 horizon model, is that this notion, if you're sort of stuck in your horizon and that's all you're thinking about, then you might just kind of hit this dead end. So the thing that is really valuable is actually identifying the path, whatever horizon you're on, to that next horizon. And actually, just as importantly, is figuring out how you can align and relate to people who might be in a horizon that is an earlier one than your own. So like looking at actually connecting up these horizons. So this kind of concept is like this: no matter what horizon you're on, this is a relevant time frame, a relevant sort of framework. Like if you're in horizon 1, in terms of your predominant work, what you want to be doing is looking at where are the off-ramps where the people I'm working with or what we're doing can actually lead to horizon 2 thinking. And if you're in horizon 2 thinking, you need to be looking at where can I draw people in from horizon 1 in my area to that horizon 2, and also where are my off-ramps to horizon 3. And if you're in horizon 3 thinking, then again, you need to be looking as to where people from early horizons can become open to your fundamentally different way of looking at things. So I'll give you just one simple example of what I mean by that, to take one sort of example from the real world that we're used to. So let's just sort of imagine we're working on dealing with a polluted river. Could be anywhere in the world. And a horizon 1 And again, let's remember, there's nothing intrinsically better or worse about each of these three. They're all important. It's not, but they're part of a flow from one to the other. So Horizon 1 is basically enforced regulations, just like Steve Dunsiger was doing with Chevron, like actually get things to be fixed based on what's currently there. Horizon 2 thinking would be to change the rules. So like, you know, the EPA would be one example of that, or something like that. Shift the rules so that that pollution won't be happening in the future. And then Horizon 3 is change the paradigm. Some of you may be familiar with I'm not sure if I'm going to pronounce it right, the Whanganui Awa River in New Zealand, which is, I should call it Aratorea, is the Aboriginal name for it, where the actual river achieved legal personhood. And so there's a whole different way of thinking about what that means. So in the short term, you may not see the difference, but that fundamental paradigm shift is what is so critical there. And I'm just going to end before we go back to a follow-on breakout session with just some other examples of third horizon thinking, so we get an idea of what the third horizon can actually look like. I think one great example is permaculture, which a lot of you will probably be familiar with, a different way of looking at how we relate to the earth, which takes a lot of indigenous wisdom and applies a lot of modern scientific understanding to come up with this set of principles. So, and these principles apply to how you look at the earth, how you catch and store energy, how you produce no waste, design from patterns to details, integrate rather than segregate. But a lot of these principles can also apply to human community interaction and social interaction. It doesn't just have to be applied to actual agriculture. So this is one, what I see as third horizon thinking. Another is Doughnut Economics. Like this is a book that Kate Raworth, visionary economist in the UK, has written that I'm sure a lot of you will be familiar with, which looks at absolutely redefining economics, shifting the paradigm. So rather than the classic paradigm we've inherited from 19th century ideas, is looking at this donut where the idea of economics is basically to live within this green ring in the middle, where the outward bound is the ecological ceiling. So we don't want to overshoot. And we already are doing that in things like climate change and biodiversity loss and nitrogen and phosphorus loading. And the inner part is a shortfall. We don't want to lack our social foundation. We want to make sure there's enough energy, water, food, health, equity for all people in our society. And so the idea then, it's a whole different framework for thinking about economics to make sure we're beyond that social foundation of the bare minimum, but without breaking out of our ecological ceiling. And so that's just an example of a different third horizon way of thinking. And the last one I'll leave you with is this notion of the commons as a way of basically rethinking the whole paradigm of human interaction, where basically the economic interaction, social interaction, political interaction, even those barriers break down, and we're actually forming collaborative communities. Very, very powerful vision for what's possible, which really transforms the way in which we as humans organize ourselves in every which way. So those are just different senses of, there are different ways to think about that third horizon. It's not just one horizon, but what they all share with themselves is a sense that we're living basically in a harmonious relationship with other human beings and with the living earth in a way that's truly regenerative. So from this, what I'd, and again, I'll pass it to Samir in a moment, but what we can explore now in this second breakout session is sort of go one level further than where we started out with, to ask yourself and to share with others in your own work, what do you see as the on-ramps and off-ramps to other horizons? And that'll depend obviously on what horizon you see yourself being, is whether you're focusing on on-ramps and off-ramps or one or the other. And then And this is where it's so critical, because we're only going to get from Horizon 1 to Horizon 3 if we're working collaboratively with people in other horizons in our particular pathway of where we're on. So this is the thing to explore. It's more like an open-ended question to start thinking how you might collaborate with those working in other horizons to establish that clear path in whatever domain you're in from Horizon 1 to 3. So that's the sort of more open-ended discussion we can get into right now in our next workshop breakout. So I'll pass to Samir.
Wonderful. Thank you, Jeremy. So let's take groups of 3 again, and this time another group that we can explore the question with. And I entered the questions in the chat so you can see them. And we'll have about 20 minutes to explore the questions. So what do you see as the on-ramps and off-ramps to other horizons in the work that you're doing? And how might you collaborate with others? So how might you collaborate with others to establish a clear path from Horizon 1 to Horizon 3? So Leslie, you could open up the rooms again for 20 minutes. That would be fantastic. Hello, everyone. Welcome back. I think people are still coming back from the breakout rooms. So I'm actually, what we're going to do next, just so we can very quickly harvest all the insights that emerge in your conversations. We unfortunately don't have time to get every one of us to share what came up. This is going to be a little shortcut to be able to get a sense for what emerged. So some of you are probably familiar with this, of what we're going to do next. But I'm going to give all of us a prompt to finish in the chat box. And once you get that prompt, I'm going to invite you to finish off your sentence, finish off the sentence, and keep it there in the chat box until I say go, and then you press enter, and then we can see all the things that emerge, okay? So don't press enter until I say go. So the prompt that we're going to be answering right now is an on-ramp that I identified ... So I'm putting that into the chat. An on-ramp that I identified, and just finish off the sentence with whatever comes to mind.
And it would be great, for as far as I'm concerned, hi Samir, it would be great if you also mention the horizon. Is it a Horizon 2 on-ramp or Horizon 3 on-ramp? Can we take a couple of minutes for this, Samir? Because I know there was a lot of fruitful stuff in our conversation. And it would be great if we could really take the time to identify these on-ramps and rather than hastily put them in the chat.
Sure.
Is that okay to just really take a couple of minutes to do this harvesting? Take your time to identify the on-ramps you've talked about.
So then, yeah, as Kareem was suggesting, maybe we take a couple more minutes to think and reflect for ourselves before we share with each other. But then I do want to do some of this chatterfall with some other questions because it's a lot of fun.
There is another suggestion, just because we are struggling to understand what the difference between on-ramping and off-ramping is. I heard it for the first time and was making notes and yet did not make note of that. So if we can bring up the PowerPoint slide that shows those waves and the off and on ramps, that would be quite amazing. I think it would be helpful.
Yes, let me do that right now.
Thank you so much.
Hold on one sec. Let me share my screen.
I don't want to end up being a bad student or bad listener, but it's so complicated stuff.
So is this the slide that you were thinking, sort of showing how Horizon 1 has off ramps to Horizon 2, Horizon 2 has off ramps to Horizon 3, and so no matter what horizon you're in, there's the on ramp or off ramp is a important element in that sort of those smooth transitions.
And could you give, Jeremy, the practical example again? Because I also was in the
Yes,
bathroom of what
absolutely,
an
sure.
off-ramp and an on-ramp looks
Yeah.
like. Thanks.
So I gave this example of the polluted river, and the idea was that Horizon 1 was like enforcing regulations to basically, you know, fix, like, based on what's currently there in the paradigm. Horizon 2 would be like to change the rules that was the whole social structure and political and legal structure around that pollution. And Horizon 3 is to change the paradigm. So in this example, it's actually establishing this whole different way of thinking about the river, that it has legal personhood with its own rights.
Well, and in that context, what would be the on-ramp, off-ramp between these three?
Well, I say that the way I would look at it is if I were dealing with the cleanup of the regulations, if I were working on that, one of the things I'd want to be doing, like say I'm a lawyer trying to enforce those regulations, is then filtering through to policymakers and maybe politicians and those who might actually affect the rules. These are the things we need to change. I'm on the ground. I know what needs to be changed structurally in order for for a different set of regulations, or to shift the incentives in the people who are doing polluting or whatever. So that would be one way in which in Horizon 1, I'm helping the on-ramps to Horizon 2. And if I'm in Horizon 2 and I'm already working on changing the rules, an on-ramp to Horizon 3 might be for myself as a person to open up to these different ways of looking at things and actually, you know, go, what's this about personhood? And actually reading about it and actually opening my own mind into this different paradigm. And then if that became something really alive to me, then actually start to work with people, so you might have progressive policymakers, none of whom even got this concept of the idea of personhood for a river, and showing them a different way of thinking. So actually, and maybe bringing somebody who's had the experience of personhood, maybe bringing an indigenous person to come to a meeting of these policymakers to just look at the different ways of thinking that are possible. So that those are ideas of on-ramps, just to give a quick sense, you know, from that particular example.
And could I ask you another question arising out of that?
Yeah.
Is that okay? Is it always that you're going from Horizon 1 to 3, or is it that you can start on Horizon 3 and be looking for the...
Right, that's exactly, which is why if you're in a later horizon, you need to be looking at the off-ramps from other horizons to your horizon. So, I mean, I see my work as being mostly in Horizon 3, but if I'm just talking to other people who share this idea of the paradigm of an ecological civilization and ignoring everybody else, the horizon, there's almost like this impassable wall between where everyone else is at in that horizon. So one of my biggest jobs in in the work I'm doing is the focus on Horizon 3, is to how can I make that something that people in Horizon 1 begin to sort of open up to these possibilities. Or if you're in Horizon 2 and you're really feeling excited about your paradigm shift, how can I make you realize what is possible in a much bigger shifting without feeling crappy about what you're doing, you know? So there's ways in which, depending on different horizons people are in, for me to make those pathways to other horizons feel natural and open and inviting. So that would be an example of, if you're focusing on Horizon 3, of how that relates to earlier horizons.
Okay, thank you.
Go for it, Samir.
So I was just going to suggest, just take 30 more seconds to finish off your thoughts, and please do enter them into the chat for whatever may emerge in your, or has emerged in your thinking. Just write whatever has come up. There's some on-ramps, off-ramps. See, Ingrid has shared that she needs to add a Horizon 2 onto her course for entrepreneurship in South Africa. Very cool. Just take a moment to read some of these that you see coming into the chat. There's quite a lot of valuable information there. Ingrid, do you mind if I ask you to share a little bit about your example and what you just wrote in the chat with the rest of the group?
Yeah, sure. So I'm working kind of simultaneously with Horizon 1 and 3, but what I realized is I needed to actually expand the horizons for who else is working in the global area of youth entrepreneurship, but also flipping the agency. So instead of making a content that is given to youth, it's making a structure where youth, in fact, produce the content themselves and the process themselves. So it's that process, but also looking at who else is in the field, who else is tweaking in which areas, so that we can, collaborate instead of do it in silos.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that, Ingrid. And I see, Svea, you also identified a on-ramp from H2 to H3. Would you care to share a little bit more with the rest of us what your thinking was behind that?
I have to just find my thing because I was reading everyone else's. So my mind was elsewhere. Okay, I think it's sort of connects in a way with something that Ingrid just said, is this notion about joining with others, particularly people who are in some way different. Yeah, so I mean, I'm involved with the International Coaching Federation at the South African level and at the global level. And one of the on-ramps that I foresee is to be able to talk more with the Africa Forum, and to work together on asking ourselves some of these questions. How would we know that we were busy with Horizon 3 instead of being busy with Horizon 2 and 1? Like, what would be tangible signs? Because otherwise it feels to me Horizon 3 can become a very, what I call blah blah talk. It's everyone's nodding their heads conceptually, but actually no one knows what that looks like.
All right. Thank you for sharing that, Svea. So I'm aware now that we're running slightly over time, so we do have to bring this session to a close. But there's one last exercise that I still really want to do, which is that Chatterfall thing that I mentioned. So again, I'm going to give you a quick prompt that you're going to finish off very quickly. Keep in the chat until I say go. And then what we'll see is all the insights come up per question. So the sentence, the prompt I invite you to finish off is, something I learned is. Something I learned is. And just finish off that sentence and don't press enter yet. Keep it in your chat. Keep it in the chat. So we'll just take a couple of seconds while I get the next one ready. So take 5 more seconds. Enter your insights. And ready? 3, 2, 1, go. Something I learned is I have the power to affect change. That many people are thinking about creativity and intuition. Cool. Okay, we're gonna try another round here. Oh, and there's some more answers coming. Distinction that I am in different horizons within my organization and in the larger ecosystem. Very cool. Okay, the next prompt. This is the final prompt. There's some more answers coming in, so I'll let them bubble in over here. But this is the last prompt before we close off the session. This is an easy one. Well, it's just two words. So I wonder. And finish off the prompts. I wonder. What are you wondering right now? Just take whatever first thoughts come to mind. Just add them there. I wonder. And I see people already entering, which is all right. In fact, for the rest of you who haven't, just go ahead and press enter. So go. So now we can see those chats. So I wonder, what's next, says Rick. It's a good question. What is next? I wonder what we'll be talking about at FLVS 2021. I wonder if we can nudge H3 visioning in high school education systems. Wonderful. I wonder what will come out of this 6-day conference from Libby. Wonderful. All right, well, everyone, that was fun. Thank you all for sharing and being here today for this this session that we organized with Jeremy. We hope it was valuable. We hope you identified some insights and on-ramps and learned something about the 3 Horizon model. Jeremy, is there any last words that you'd like to share with this group that we had here today?
Yeah, I guess the only thing I want to share is I'm just so super impressed by the quality of this interaction, and I feel a sense of excitement that this is such a great group, and the sense that these passes going from Horizon 1 to 2, 2 to 3, actually this whole workshop, this whole 5-day summit is about making that path actually come about. So I'm super psyched and super grateful for this whole summit that's taking place. I think it's fantastic.